back, boys and girls. Man, I am so glad that you are here for another epic week of Worship Center Kids. You know, we've been following some pretty epic stories in the past. We've talked about Moses and the Israelites. We've talked about David and Goliath. We have learned all of these cool epic stories. And let me tell you something. This one that we're learning today ranks right up there with some of the coolest stories in the Bible. But before we get into that story, and let me tell you what that story is all about. We're talking about an evil king. We're talking about an army of false prophets. We're talking about a severe drought and even fire from heaven. Totally cool. But before we get started in that, let's talk about our main point. Our main point today is, I will tell others to do what is right. Have you ever been in a situation where you were able to tell somebody how to do something right or how to act in the right way? Now, I'm not talking about being bossy. Some of you have absolutely no problem in the bossy department. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being able to educate them and teaching them how to do what is right. My son currently has his driver's permit, not his license, his permit, which means that he is learning how to drive. He has to practice driving so he can then get his license. So I get to sit in the passenger side and help instruct him when situations come up that he's not really sure how to handle. Could you imagine what would happen if he didn't follow those instructions? Or if he didn't do what was right? It would not be pretty. So in our story today, we're going to hear about someone who really tried to tell people to do what was right. The story is found in the Old Testament in 1 Kings chapter 17 and 18. The story starts out in the middle of a drought. Now, a drought is whenever it hasn't rained in a really long time. Water had not fallen from the sky in a long time. Nothing was growing, and even the livestock, the animals, were starting to die. Things were not looking good for Israel. They were being ruled by a very evil king. His name was King Ahab. King Ahab was a very evil, evil man. But we're going to talk about another man who was not evil. His name was Elijah. Elijah was a prophet of God. And he went to Ahab, and he had told Ahab some time ago, 3 years, that rain was not going to fall because King Ahab was allowing things to go on that should not have been going on. And Elijah let him know that it wasn't going to rain until Elijah said so. So here we are 3 years later. After Elijah told Ahab that, he left and nobody could find him. So 3 years later, no rain had fallen and God was now ready to provide rain once again. So Elijah went back to the king and let him know that it was going to rain. But it wasn't just going to start raining. God was going to get their attention one way or the other. So Elijah tells Ahab to go and call all of the Israelites to come and join them on a place called Mount Carmel. Now, he didn't just say, just send the Israelites. See, Elijah was very upset over the fact that there were a lot of people that were following idols. And so he called 400, here's where that army comes in, 400 prophets of Baal, people who worshipped an idol named Baal. But he didn't just stop there. He also called 450 followers of another idol named Asherah. On this mount is where the showdown happens. Elijah was so mad that there were so many people following a false god. He says, How long will you waver? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. Everyone was quiet. So Elijah challenges Baal to a contest against God. He and the prophets of Baal built an altar. They built an altar and they brought an offering. Now, they both called out to their gods, and they decided that the God who answered by catching the fire to the wood and to the altar would prove that he is truly God. Elijah lets the prophets of Baal go first, and they cry out to Baal, and nothing happens. So they cry out some more, and then they start dancing. And still, nothing happens. Elijah starts kidding them. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's daydreaming. He even says, maybe he's in the bathroom and can't hear you. Well, they just get louder and louder and louder, and nothing happens. So now it's Elijah's turn. Elijah built the altar, and then he built a trench around the altar. And he had 4 large containers of water brought in and poured all over this altar and this offering. Now, I think you realize wet wood doesn't burn. But Elijah had these 4 big buckets poured over, and he had that done 3 more times. So this was drenched, and there was water all in the trenches. Everything was soaked. And then Elijah prayed. He said, "O Lord, prove today that you are God." And then it happened. Immediately, fire flashes down from heaven, burning up all of the offering, the altar, the wood, and even laps up all of the water. He had done it. He had done it. He had called down fire from heaven. He had called it down and showed that God was truly God. All of Israel fell on their knees and they worshiped God. How awesome was that? How awesome that fire came down, and even though it was wet, it completely wiped it all up because God is truly God. Now, there's going to be times in your life that it's not going to be easy to tell people what is right. It wasn't easy for Elijah either. But he still stood firm on what he believed and what he knew was right. And because of that, all of Israel changed their ways and they began to worship God because they knew that God was the one and only true God. So are you willing? Are you able? And are you ready to tell people to do what is right? Not by being bossy, but by educating and instructing and showing people to do what is right. I cannot wait to hear about the amazing things that you're doing to help instruct people in the Word of God. Bye, guys.